This is Chip Maxwell, and you're listening to the Retire Smart podcast with David Brooks. David takes on the question of whether college is still worth the cost, pointing to skyrocketing tuition, lackluster job outcomes, and the burden of federal loan guarantees. He also highlights alternative paths like trade schools, the military, and self-education, before turning to housing and construction data as a warning sign for the broader economy. David, you sent the team a chart with the message, "Is college a ripoff?" For most, sadly, yes. Why is that?
Well, higher education has failed our youth in a significant way. And I say it on the airways all the time. Look, I went to school. My brothers went to school. My sister went to school. But you need to go with an intention of knowing what you're going to get out of school. And, of course, when you went to college 40, 50 years ago, one, you got an education, but two, you got connections, and you learned, how those what you learned would be applying in your career, so you could provide for your family. Today, all that knowledge is on the internet, so there's no special knowledge you can't get, and with AI, that's only going to get faster and easier. The problem is these degrees are not delivering reasonable results for the cost of what they're getting. And of course, the reason is very simple: we guarantee the loans by the federal government. So why would anyone lower their prices? If we had a system where, hey, we're going to reward you based on what you actually do in society or tied it to it, I say make the colleges guarantee the loans, prove that the education you provide is worthwhile, and it would provide. But the statistics are right here on the graph. We have one showing you right now. The cost of college tuition is up almost 700%, right? Versus everything else has gone up about 200%. So this
is from 1985 to 2025.
Yep. So basically, after the last 40 years, the cost of education is inflated at almost 4 times the inflation rate of everything else. And they're coming out, they're not getting better paying jobs.
What
we talked about
racket.
This. Well, because it's guaranteed. Again, take the guarantees away and this solves itself, right? And of course, I think it's great to get public education. I think it's great to get a higher education. I think public education can be a phenomenal thing, but we keep wasting money. Of course, the graph I've showed it here before is we've not grown the teachers or the student base. We've grown the administrative bodies on top of this. Your wife has had that complaint, right, in private conversations and right here in public schools in Omaha. So we have to get serious again about this debate. Education, by the way, in the world, we were number one in 1974 when we introduced the Department of Education that has basically effectively been shut down this year. We're now 34th, out of the top 50 countries. That's a pretty sad state of affairs with the economic productivity that this country engineers. So, I'm a big fan of guys like Mike Rowe telling these kids, look at other options. You could go do the military for a couple of years, get yourself, some discipline and maturity, serve your country. You could go to a vocational or tech schools and get a very viable career that pays you immediately upon walking out of there. And you don't have to go into debt, or if you do, it's minimal to achieve real skills that you can apply and use anywhere. And I would just tell you, so if you want to be a lawyer, you want to be a doctor, certainly higher education is probably the route to go. And then you further that education. But I have my oldest son, he's 29. He took a while, but he kind of figured out when he got motivated. And I was like, look, I'll pay you when you're ready. And the first semester's on me. And if you get grades, I'll keep paying the check. And he did. And he came back from a wedding. His friends were getting married, had graduated college. So he started much later when he was 24, but he cranked it through in 2.5 years, got a degree because he was motivated and he liked the field. He had friends working the field he works in, which is in medical. But anyway, the point being is driving. His girlfriend that he's had for multiple years now is getting a PhD from Johns Hopkins University right now, and she'll basically be unemployable. It's on museum curation, and I don't know exactly, but I'm I know she may get employed in it, but she has to wait tables right now. So she's going to get a degree that's costing her quite a lot of dollars, postgraduate degrees, 2 levels, and maybe gets a job in a handful of cities that have large museums that would afford, hire these type of people, et cetera. So all I'm saying is, and it's one thing if it's your passion, et cetera, and you have scholarships, but think through the career choices. Have your kids think through, will this degree pay for itself? And there's data out there to show a lot of it will, but you've got to choose something that's going to be hireable. And kids are walking out of college right now, and it's the worst year right now. The kids that just graduated May of this year are having the hardest time getting employed of anyone in America.
I've had the same conversations with my children. I have 7 children, and it's not a one-size-fits-all proposition. And some have gone to college, and it's worked out well for them, doing well. One of them has a 2-year associate's degree from Metro. I'm very impressed with Metro Community College here locally, the more I've learned about it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And none of that is, unfortunately, we had a stigma out probably in the 80s and 90s. If you didn't go to college, you were less than. You were thought. I don't think that stigma's there anymore. So I think a lot of kids now at least are learning. They have the freedom to go. And there's actually a website called theuncollege.org, and it's sponsored by a ton of tech companies that basically create an online university for free just to see if you have some of the skills some tech companies may want to hire. So I just encourage people, do your research before you sign up and start writing those checks.
And your other point is well taken. My mind is running back now to Charlie Kirk, whom we mentioned at the start of the show, and before him even Rush Limbaugh, self-educated guys,
never went to school.
Which with the resources out there now, you can do that. All right, David, in the time we have left, we've been tracking what is happening in the home building industry because it's a major indicator of where we are economically and
financially. And it's a huge job creator, right?
Yes.
Which we know is in trouble.
All right. So you sent us a chart with a huge disparity between the SPX and lumber, and you want to know about new building. Is anything happening that hasn't started yet? Break this down for us.
Well, permits are down, right? And then lumber is a great leading indicator of construction that will be yet to happen. And this chart clearly shows lumber, listen to me. Too much coffee. The lumber falling, basically off a cliff on this chart. Yet you see the S&P continue to skyrocket to all-time highs. So that's a leading indicator telling you that construction is slowing down. Demand for lumber is dropping radically. Now, that's on the wholesale side of it. I also sent you a builder report from. So I have contractors. My nephew is up here. He's a general contractor of Orlando, and
Tyler,
he was here.
You took him to the football game.
Yeah, he went to his first Husker game last week.
We had a picture of him on the screen.
We had a lot of fun. Yeah. But one of the things they pay attention to is Romac Lumber. It's a Central Florida lumber company, but they do a great job. The guy's retired now, but he still puts out this weekly report and monthly reports he sends out to all the contractors in Central Florida that want to sign up for his newsletter, kind of letting them know where wholesale prices are. Because when you build a house, and Tyler, my nephew, was here, his father, Mike, who's my brother-in-law, was also a general contractor for over 45 years. He's now retired, but they give me a lot of great data on inputs from roofing costs, et cetera. And inside this report, they're showing that the tariffs have shown up in a way on certain supplies that these builders are having to push, and they're having to push the prices up on some of these new construction builds, et cetera, right? But that's telling you that may be temporary, and the demand is such falling off, those prices may start to fade back down.
Rebar,
but we saw,
trusses, steel anchors, shingles, all the things you need to build a house.
And this report, if the average layman, it's going to be kind of boring to read. But if you're building a house, this is really accurate to tell you what are the costs, right? Your concrete going into the pour, the rebar, the copper, the roofing shingles, the lumber to frame the house, et cetera, plumbing fixtures, pipe, PVC. All these things matter, and these guys have amazing software now where they can, literally click a mouse on building, the Model A house on elevation C. It can tell them our cost to build, if I bought all those materials today, is X, and then they have to mark it up, of course, pay for labor, et cetera. But it's amazing information right now. And if construction slows down, which I'm telling you it is, that hurts the economy in very big ways, because every house, single-family home built in America, Chip, adds 2.9 permanent jobs to that local economy. In other words, because a family moves into a home, right? And if you had a 200 neighborhood home built up, then we're going to need a grocery store like a Hy-Vee. You're going to have a bank open up. You're going to have a pharmacy open up. You're going to have a McDonald's, et cetera. And so this just fuels the economy when houses are built. But if those are not going to be built, that could spell some problems for us in the near future.
We've looked at surveys and studies that corroborate this data and the anecdotal evidence from your relatives in Florida. And I just can't, New York and other places, I get this vision of people flooding into Florida, and yet housing demand seems to be weakening.
Yeah, and it's different. Every market's different. Again, I keep telling our clients, listen, Omaha is an incredibly well insulated city to go through bad economic times because we have such a diverse economy here. It's the largest city in America with over 500,000 people in it. to weather the storm, so to speak, during a recession, because we're not so dependent on one industry. For instance, where I lived in Florida, east coast of Florida, Brevard County, Florida, it's a 74-mile long county, but it's only about 15 miles wide. It's a very long, thin strip on the east coast of Florida. Well, that's where NASA is headquartered. In fact, the area code on my cell phone is still 321, as in 321 launch, right? And that's why they have the area code. But when the NASA program got shut down under President Obama's first term, we lost 115,000 jobs directly contract from the government, or the vendors like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, U.S. Space Alliance, et cetera, that made over $115,000, right? So these are high income. And what happened was houses in places like Merritt Island and Vieira, Florida, where I live, went down not 10%, Chip. We had houses go down 50 to 70% for a period of 4 years. That's painful if you have to sell the house. And again, they recovered, but it took 10 years for housing prices in that marketplace to recover. Now, that's the extreme side of it. But again, nationwide, economically, this does not help the economy.
Thank you for listening to the Retire Smart podcast with David Brooks. If you want to learn how to generate lifetime income, reduce your tax bill, and maintain your lifestyle in retirement, visit retiresmartpodcast.com. And make sure to subscribe to keep up with new episodes every week.